Since these problems are important, I want to emphasize them. Contrast resolution is shown in the table. As I explained in the previous session, the expression here is related to bits. If you look at the problem, it asks which one has the best contrast resolution among those represented in the digital scan converter. Simply put, the question is asking which one has the best contrast resolution when represented as an image. The correct answer is to choose option A. The higher the number of bits, the greater the contrast resolution that can be expressed, so the image quality is better. Now let's move on and look at question number 302. If you look at the question, it asks about the frame rate of television, but since that's not an important topic, we'll skip it. Let's look at question number 303. Before solving this problem, let's briefly review the concept of a converter. When an ultrasound signal is sent and then received, the first step in recording it on the device is to use an AD converter, which converts the analog signal into a digital one. Next, after processing the signal digitally, when displaying it as an image, that is, when showing it on a monitor, you need to apply a digital to analog converter to convert the digital signal back into an analog one. Once again, in the process of storing the signal after receiving it, we use an AD converter. When displaying on a monitor, the process of converting from digital to analog, that is, from D to A, is involved. Based on this information, if we reinterpret the question, it says that they want to display the contents of the memory system here on the monitor. In the end, you can see that these are keywords related to converting such digital systems into analog. If we look for the correct answer, we can choose option number 2. As for the converter here, don't overthink it. Just remember the two types, converting analog to digital or digital to analog. That's all you need to keep in mind. Let's move on and look at question number 304. In the case of this question, it's a pattern where we organize the content through problem solving. This question is asking about another name for a digital scan converter. In this case, another term would be image memory, as seen in option C. For now, just keep in mind that these two refer to the same concept. Let's move on and look at question number 305. This question deals with a technique that is widely used in actual clinical practice. This refers to a technique where, after pressing the freeze button, you move the scroll to go back to a previous image. You've probably encountered this during examinations. After freezing, you scroll back to review earlier images. This technique is called Cine loop, as mentioned in option A. Relevant keywords include returning to a previous image after freezing, so please pay attention to such expressions. Now let's move on and look at question 306. Looking at the question, it asks what it is called when 8 bits are grouped together. In other words, when these bits form a single group, the term byte is used. Through solving this problem, just briefly review the concept. Let's look at question 307 right below. This question asks you to select the part related to storing images in an ultrasound system. The keyword here is storage. Secondly, it displays on the screen. When you see this kind of expression, remember that it is related to the scan converter. In this case, you should select the scan converter, which is related to image storage. Also, when it comes to display, they might ask about that as well. Additionally, keep in mind that they might ask whether it's from analog to digital or from digital to analog. Next, let's move on and look at question number 308. Yes, you can consider this as a simple calculation problem that always appears at least once. So you just need to remember a few representative numbers. The term shade of gray appears here, as well as the term bit. These are usually calculation problems that ask you to convert how many levels or quantities can be represented. To make it easy, take the number in front of bit here, raise it to the power, and calculate it as an exponent. Ultimately, this is a question asking what the value of 2 to the 8th power is. The correct answer is to choose 256 in this case. It would be good to remember some representative values for the options. For example, 16 can be seen as 2 to the 4th power. and then you have 2 to the 5th, 2 to the 6th, and 2 to the 7th power. They could also create questions by just changing the number in front. For example, if the question mentions orbit, you can convert it to 2 to the 5th power and select the related correct answer. This is the kind of calculation problem it is. Of course, even if you don't memorize them separately, you can still calculate the values one by multiplying, but if you memorize a few of these standard values here, it will definitely help you when solving problems. Once again, since this is a question pattern that always appears, I want to emphasize this problem one more time. Next, let's move on and look at question number 309. Looking at the question, it asks what determines the spatial resolution in a scan converter. When scan converter and spatial resolution come up, you just need to remember one associated keyword. You should choose the answer that refers to the number of pixels. I can explain that the spatial resolution is determined by the number of pixels in the matrix inside the scan converter. You can refer to this part as supplementary information through the problem-solving section. Now let's look at question number 310 below. Looking at the question, it says that during an abdominal ultrasound examination, a phenomenon called washout has appeared. To explain this expression simply, it's like when you frequently wash colored clothes and the color fades out. A color different from the original may appear. The term washout, used in ultrasound examinations, can be understood in the same way. Even if you adjust the brightness or the TGC, time gain compensation, on the image, you can think of it as a state where the brightness in that area does not change. It refers to something that does not respond to such controls. In other words, where there is no noticeable change in color, as if the color has drained away. In this case, you should select the answer that is related to this situation. This is a keyword that suggests there may be a problem with the pre-processing function of the pre-processing equipment. It would be helpful to keep these points in mind as a reference when solving similar problems. Just make sure you understand the basic concept of what washed out means here.